Hello and welcome to today's reading from Agastya Valipadu, Agastya, Purpose of Life. Today we continue the topic on worship. Sage Agastya says, ritual of worship or puja is one that teaches an ordinary person, which means a family person, how to conduct daily activities in a righteous and systematic way. So Supreme God created several gods during the act of creation. From the first three, the Trinity were formed crores of these other deities. Each deity and attendant has a unique duty, and they have the power related to it. We pray to a particular deity depending on what we desire from that deity. So, what Appa is saying is, rituals were created as we have already discussed before, because in the ancient days, people understood it is very difficult for people to look at an absolute or energy without form and try to bring in devotion and feelings. Because if you remember, as we have already talked about, it's feelings and devotions which actually help us connect to higher frequencies, which are basically higher consciousness or divine beings. To connect with them, we need to have devotional feelings. That brings in that connection, like tuning into a radio station. But what happened here is, because it is difficult for people to imagine a form or just pray to something which they do not know, rituals were all created by our ancient rishis, so that people had a method, they had a way of going with each ritual and performing one thing at a time, invoking the god, lighting a lamp. So mind starts getting focused into what needs to be done, and as the mind is getting focused, then they had some prayers like arati song or some devotional song which would create imagery in the mind. So that is very important when it comes to worship, because without all that, it's very hard for an ordinary person like us, normal people, to get that kind of devotion. As we go higher on the yogic path, it becomes easier to just directly connect to higher consciousness. But until then, we require the forms of gods and gurus to evoke that devotion. So he says, Supreme God has created several gods during the act of creation. And from the first three, we formed crores of other deities. So now we know that in Hinduism, we talk about more than 30 crore gods, and it is often misunderstood and it is ridiculed by other people. But what we do not understand is, we understand that every soul, everything that is manifest, has God in it. Because without God, if we think of it as an element of God, without God, nothing exists. So that's why we have the story of Prahalada, where Hiranyakashipu says, "Where is God?" And he says, "Is he in this pillar?" And Prahalada says, "Yes." And he kicks the pillar, and there appears Vishnu. So all these Puranas tell us that, show us that God is everywhere. So God does not really have a form. However, they have different frequencies and different duties. And to assist man to understand God or a particular power of each God, a form is given, and all attributes connected to that form is given to that particular God. Say, for example, Muruga has a spear, and he also holds the palm leaf manuscript in one hand in many pictures, which shows that he is Gnaneshwara, the giver of knowledge. Chamundeshwari, we know, is somebody who kills or kills bad or negative things. So, like that, Hindu Purana created this kind of rituals. Hindu ancient rishis created these rituals to help us develop the idea of faith and devotion. Thank you, Sister Sumati, for joining us. We will, you can continue reading from the second paragraph, which is like each deity and attendant has a unique duty. Sister Sumati?
Agni. Which one is that?
Ritual of worship, and we're in the second paragraph, which says each deity and attendant has a unique duty. So I'll continue until you find the place. So each deity and attendant has a unique duty, and they have the power related to it. We pray to a particular deity depending on what we desire from that deity. Here, what Appa Agastya is saying is every duty and an attendant, which is Ganas, have a unique duty. So, gods were created and they have a duty towards creation. So, each one is duty bound to remain in creation until the end of this cycle of creation to help human beings. So, in that, they have made a big sacrifice in being there to help us. They too could, attain liberation, completely go back and merge into the absolute, but they do not. They choose to remain to help human beings. So he says every one of them has a particular duty. So, Sister Sumati, are you ready to continue?
Yeah, that is why our ancestors stipulated days to offer prayers to a particular god. For example, to get rid of troubles, we pray to Vinayagan, to remove obstacles, Vigneshwaran, to appease Ganas, Ganeshwaran. Similarly,
We already have stipulated gods, names of different gods for different reasons. So to get rid of troubles, we have Vinayagan, because Vinayagan is one who removes the weakness or the troubles. Then the Vinayagan to remove troubles. Then Vigna is Vigneshwaran to remove obstacles. That's why Hindus have this practice of going to the Ganesha temple and offering prayers to Ganesha before anything else. Or in any temple, Ganesha is always a deity. Whether you buy a new vehicle or a new car, we always pray to Ganesha. So because he is the remover of obstacles, he removes troubles, and he has the power. And then to appease Ganas, Ganeshwaran. So what are Ganas? Ganas are elementals. Elementals in the sense they are like demigods or they have certain powers. So, to understand all this, again, go back to the idea of different levels of energy, different types of energy that is existing in the universe that helps us when we connect to that particular type of energy. So, even if you look at it, we have Barbara Brennan, who is a NASA scientist. She wrote a book called The Hands of Light. And in that, she talks about tree spirits. So even trees have their own ganas that help them to, they protect the trees, they're near the trees. So the more older the trees, then you can see the tree spirit associated with it. So every living form has some kind of protection. There are for animals and for in the Western countries they call them goblins and stuff like that. But basically they're all just elementals. So in the previous discussion also we talked about how even thoughts can become elementals. Repeated thoughts focused on a certain thing can create a form. And so elementals or ganas are also to be appeased. In theosophy, they say even the natural forces like storms in nature are also governed by ganas. So if you look back at it, Hinduism already knew about all this because we are talking about energy levels, different energy that helps with different things. So if you look at Megha Malhar Raga, which we know, in the ancient days, people had the power to sing it and rain would fall. So what does that mean? It's not the song or the tune that invokes God. It is the energy in the syllables, the ovals, the way it is sung. Because it's if understand everything is energy, one energy can affect another energy. So that is why we have in the ancient times Deepak Raga, Megha Malhar Raga, which could create the necessary vibrations to bring a change in nature. And that is lost of late, it has been lost. But our hope is one day all this will be rediscovered by science. So continue, Sister Smriti.
Yeah. Similarly, to be a virtuous wife and to be of good character and to increase knowledge and wealth, we pray to Lakshmi. Saraswati, graceful and adorned in white, sitting on the swan, who is the personification of peace, is the one who blesses us with knowledge. Parameshwari is the personification of power. She is also the personification of the Absolute, the one who has assumed different forms to help grant different desires. Father Shiva is very generous. He is the god who, without hesitation, gives whatever boon a devotee asks, without even asking why it is needed. Both Shiva and Shakti bless the devotee who understands the glory of these blessings.
So what Appa is saying is he's explaining what Hinduism is already designated, a role for each god or each divine power. And he is telling us that, okay, these are important because if you want knowledge, then pray to Saraswati. And he also says in Manipadu, Lakshmi also is the giver of knowledge. So pray to them and you will connect to that consciousness which allows knowledge to seep into your consciousness much more easily. Pray to Vigneshwara or Ganeshwara to remove all the obstacles to go forward in your life. But remember, just praying without uh, devotion will not get the results. The entire key in worship is being able to connect to that energy with your feelings because feelings are able to send out vibrations that can connect to these higher powers. So a person who does not even know how to pray can go and pray to God without knowing mantras if the feeling is genuine, if the devotion is genuine. Then just calling Amma Lakshmi or Amma Saraswati or Appa Agastya, that will bring the power to you or the grace to you. Go ahead, sister.
It is Chamundeshwari who assumes a terrible form when a devotee becomes arrogant and crosses the limits of God given laws. Destroyer of evil, Durga, giver of food, Annapurneshwari, remover of fear, Kollur Mukambika, the one who is dark in appearance, Kali, bestower of power, Siddheshwari, giver of knowledge, Jnaneshwari, these are the different forms that Mother Parameshwari has assumed. Now, the one whom we call Mother, Karumari, is the one who gives many siddhis or powers. Dharmeshwari cleanses sin, and Bhuvaneshwari appears as mother when you address her as such and punishes those that are arrogant. When a devotee addresses her with love as a mother, she is the one who bestows her love generously.
So here, Appa is talking about the feminine energy forms because we had attributed a feminine energy to some of these divine powers, which is, Annapurneshwari for food and then Mukambika to dispel fear and those things. And then he also says, if you address Mother, Parmeshwari as Mother, then she bestows her love generously. So if you think about it, well, if you have a male form and a female form is one we're more comfortable with as an aspect of mother, because with a mother, we are more comfortable with being ourselves, being genuine. So that genuine feeling within us, knowing that no matter what we have done, our mother will love us. That is how he says we must approach Divine Mother. Because when we do that, then her grace, we are able to attract to ourselves. Go ahead, sister.
Epitome of knowledge, knowledge personified, the one who gives meaning to the word knowledge, is Father Arumugan. He appears as one who is beautiful, as a friend, and as a renunciant. He bestows the attribute connected with the form he portrays when people pray to him in that particular form.
So again, here Appa is talking about. See, most of us know that Armugan Muruga is, he destroyed evil demons. We look at his spear and we think of him as a protector from evil, right? Which is also right. But another very important aspect of Muruga or Arumugan is that he is the bestower of knowledge. If you remember that story in the Puranas where he, asked Brahma to tell him something and Brahma is not able to explain it and he actually imprisons Brahma and then tells his father the truth about the absolute, then we realize that Armagan is the pinnacle of knowledge. So for yogis, especially those who are following the Jnana path, path of knowledge, Jnana path, should always, you know, uh, try to appease or pray to Arumugan for knowledge. And Appa Agastya always talks about Arumugan when he talks about knowledge. Then he says, he bestows the attribute connected with the form he portrays when people pray to him in that particular form. So sometimes he appears as Andi, which is a renunciant. So when you're praying to Muruga, pray to that form which is the one that you are looking for in terms of grace, like in a beautiful form with his hair and holding the spear and the book of knowledge. Then he is the giver of knowledge. He is the protector from evil or negative forces. But if you pray to him as Andi, then that is what you're actually praying for. So that is something everybody needs to remember, because many of us go to Palani and we pray to the God there without understanding we are praying to a renunciant. So that is an important thing that Appa Agastya is telling us in this particular paragraph. Go ahead, Sid.
Now, let me tell you how to perform the ritual of worship. Ritual of worship is known as a rule, law, or traditional system of offering prayers. Ritual of worship is different from the fire ritual or the homam. Meditation is different from these two.
Here, Appa is
Though
clearly making a distinction between worship, homa, and meditation. Why is that? Think about it. Ritual of worship, usually when we pray, as ordinary human beings, as householders, we go to a temple and pray, or we do some prayer at home. It's usually connected with a personal request. We always are praying for ourselves and our family and our children, or maybe friends. But it's always a personal want or a desire that we are praying for. When we come to fire ritual or homam, there is a bigger, higher significance to it. It is connected with the community, welfare of the society, the community, and the world itself. And how that is, we will learn as we go further into this chapter. Meditation, as you know, is completely different from these two, because in that there is no ritual, there is no outward, worship or any offering of anything except going completely internal. There are some gurus who lead the students from ritual of worship stage by stage to meditation, and that is okay, because many people, as I said, it's hard for them to just sit down and start meditating and thinking of the absolute or trying to connect to higher consciousness. So in those cases, yes, it's good to light a lamp, sit in front of an altar, and then listen to devotional songs so that feeling is evoked and you start beginning to focus, and that focus finally ends in going into meditation and doing what we do, which is go internally to realize our true selves. But that is why meditation is completely different from these two, because meditation is totally internal. It is never external. It's an internal journey that is only known to the person who meditates. And if it's an advanced guru, then the advanced guru knows what you are going through. But it's impossible for anyone else to know what is going on within you. So we have ritual, which is very personal, the fire ritual or homam, which is more for the bigger or larger needs of the society or community, and it's very important. And we will learn more about it later. And meditation, which is totally internal. Go ahead, sister.
those that perform fire rituals or the homam will employ those that know the rules of the methods of performing fire rituals and use necessary materials, chant mantras, light fire, and offer certain sacrificial materials to the fire. As these materials burn and smoke comes out of that fire, The power of the Vedic mantras mixes with that smoke and cleanses the area around it.
This is important.
Now,
So what I was saying is, the homam is not never normally performed by any individual or a family member. It's usually we invite priests or people who know the rites, and then they have a whole, a ritual where they cleanse the area. They use a certain type of material to have the homam ready, and then they offer different things to Agni and then chant the Vedic mantras. So he says, when these mantras are being chanted, the power of the mantra mixes with the smoke and cleanses the area around it. That is why it is very important when you're in a wedding or in a Griha Pravesham that you understand that this is what is happening. That area is being cleansed because of the power of the mantra, which is infused into the smoke that spreads around the area. Go ahead.
now I will explain under what circumstances a fire ritual is performed. In those days, kings used to perform fire rituals for victory, welfare of the kingdom, and for benevolence of nature. The one who performs the fire ritual will only attain the transition world between earth and heaven. We will go into more detail after I explain the different methods of performing the ritual of worship or the puja.
So here, Appa's saying, there are different reasons. In the olden days, they did it for yagas and other reasons, but now it is more for, uh, you know, housewarming or for marriages and other things. But he also says those who perform this fire ritual go only to the area between the earth and Swargaloka. So what is this loka? It's called the Bhuvar Loka. So they do not attain liberation by doing that. So if anybody is saying, "Oh, you perform this yoga, you're going to attain the supreme, ultimate Satyaloka," that is not going to happen because after Bhuloka, we have what is called Govardloka, which is actually inhibited by semi-divine beings. This is where the Ganas and demigods are all there. So that is how far we can go if we perform this fire ritual in terms of trying to go forward in spiritual life. But above that is the Swargaloka, Swarloka. But that is the plane of gods. And even that is not the end, but you do not go there if you perform this particular ritual. So since we are on the topic of lokas, Hinduism has very clearly defined the different levels of lokas. We talk about Bhurloka, that is the earth, Bhuvarloka, which is the astral plane where we have the demigods, Svaraloka, which is the Swarga or heaven where divine beings are there. Then Maharloka is above that, and there we have the Bodhisattvas and the Arhats, that kind of, higher beings. Then comes Janaloka, which is the plane of God consciousness. Here are all the mystical teachers and spiritual beings, like Ramana Maharshi and all those people. Then we go to Tapaloka, that is the highest plane in the created world, which is the plane of the rishis. They are the rishis of the ancient time, or uh, the highly developed souls who within a moment can return to the absolute but choose to remain here to help us. And beyond that is Satyaloka, the highest state of consciousness. This is where we reach when we arrive at the state of self realization. So, what are these? Are these like planes of existence, like, one over the other, like that? No, these are all conscious states of consciousness. So, these are all different levels of energy, and it is all right here. It is all vibrating at different levels, higher levels. The more pure you are, the higher you go in these levels. And the more you connected to these higher levels, that is the plane of existence where you will, connect to when you're in meditation, and where you will probably pass when you pass from this earthly body. That is the plane you will probably exist in until you come back and then finally attain the Satyaloka, which is the highest state of consciousness, where there is no longer any duality. That is the end of our journey. But below this, we have other lokas, below the earth loka. What are these again? Planes of consciousness. So we have the Atala loka, where people who have ego driven and lustful desires and material enjoyment, they are there, which means even if you're living on the earth plane, your consciousness is at the level of Atala loka. Then we have Vitala, where people are very materially minded and they're totally they don't know about anything higher in life. They have no concept of spiritual life or God, and they're almost they dismiss all these things about higher frequencies and gods and divine beings. Then we have Sutala Loka, where they are also materially minded people and they do not know about higher levels of existence, but they made mistakes and they've arrived there, but they have the ability to come back to higher planes. Then there is Tathala Loka, which is where the more tamasic kind of people exist in consciousness. Again, we are not talking about people actually living there, but their consciousness is in that level, and they know nothing more than just eating, sleeping. If you look at them, they're very slovenly. Their homes are very dirty. That kind of people are in Tathala Loka. Then we come to Mahatala Loka, and there is the plane of temptation, where people are into, very bad things like addictions, like drugs, alcohol, physical addictions, like sexual addictions, stuff like that. And beyond all that, the worst is where we have people who are violent in nature, sadists, murderers, etc. So even black magicians actually belong to this most basic loka. So even though we are living on the earth plane and the physical plane, our consciousness is connected to these different levels at different times. Not especially the lower lokas, people are either even in normal human beings like us, sometime or the other, sometimes we connect to one of those. But those who are on the spiritual field go higher, connect to higher levels of consciousness. Go ahead, sister.
So I'll just read the last sentence. We will go into more detail after I explain the different methods of performing the ritual of worship or puja. So to begin, the idol or photograph of God is decorated. Then an offering of fruit and flowers are made. Some flowers are placed at the feet of the deity. Objects of worship, including material like fruit, sweets, and money, are placed in front of the deity. This is the basic ritual that people have learned from their ancestors while worshipping God. Many devotees use articles made of silver and spend time decorating the deity with gold and silver ornaments. The intent is mainly that others may appreciate their skills in decoration. It is like throwing sacred water on a rock.
So Appa is very, very clear in this. He says, how do people worship? Let's take a look at that. So he says, one is, where all of us do that. We cleanse the altar and then we offer flowers, we keep money, fruit, and all sweets. Okay, that is devotion, that is okay. That's a very basic level of worship, he says. Then there are some devotees who take a lot of pride in using silver and gold. They decorate the kalasha with all these gold ornaments, and they give so much importance to decorating the altar. But there is no devotion. So the main thing is they not only want to decorate, they want to invite people to come look at the decoration. So what is the intent there? The intent is more, oh, look what I have done, how beautifully I have decorated the god. But that Happa says is like throwing sacred water on a rock. It makes no difference. They're not connecting to the higher levels of consciousness, which is in the divine energy forms of gods. And go ahead.
At the next level, devotees place a few flowers, cleanse their heart, and squeezing the fruit called devotion from their hearts, bathe the deity from head to toe with that devotional juice. This is the middle path of the prayer ritual. More
Even
advanced, yeah.
this Appa saying is still the middle path where you just offer a few flowers, keep your heart clean, and you pray. But even that is still middle level. But he says for a yogi, there is another level. Go ahead, sister.
More advanced than these two forms of devotion is when a devotee understands that he needs no offerings in the form of fruit, milk, or food cooked in ghee to place before the deity. It is the highest type of worship where one plucks the ego from oneself and places it at the feet of God, and even for a moment, in great devotion, addresses God thus: Father, without you, I am not. Please protect me. But my son, not everybody is able to understand this type of high method of offering puja. That is why the Vedas have prescribed a certain set of rules to help the mind of the devotee focus on worship.
So again, Appa now is saying the highest form of worship is you don't have to offer anything to an altar or a photograph or an idol, but do Manasa Puja. And in Valipadu, he has given an entire chapter on how to perform Manasa Puja. The only thing that is required, he says, is take your ego and put it aside and leave it at the feet of God and say, without you, I am not. That is the highest form of puja because in that, your ego is no longer there. So when your ego is no longer there, connection to the higher levels happen even more easily because the mind is no longer stopping you from connecting to higher levels of consciousness. So a true yogi goes to a temple, understands there's power in the idol there because these idols were consecrated by the great rishis of the yore, sits in a corner and absorbs that energy internally, mentally. The yogi does not need to go and offer prayers to a god. But many of us are not advanced, so it's okay for us to go and do a little bit of puja and offer prayers because we feel happy about it. But Appa says, go beyond all that. Get rid of your ego. And thus, even for a moment, if you don't no longer think of the I, which is very hard to do, then just let it go. So that is the highest form of worship. So the first form of worship is just offering something in the house with devotion. That is okay. Then the second is putting all this, decorating and spending a lot of time on that, and that is totally useless according to Appa. Then, what we do, which is place a few flowers and pray, and that is also a mid-level of prayer. But go beyond that and do internal prayer. In this case, you don't need to go to temples, you don't need to go to pilgrimages. This is for the higher advanced yogi. So such a yogi does not need to go anywhere because the temple is within his own heart. God resides within his own heart. Go ahead, sister.
But my son, not everybody is able to understand this type of high method of offering puja. That is why the Vedas have prescribed a certain set of rules to help the mind of the devotee focus on worship. The Vedas detail how to place mango leaves, how many mango leaves to place, and the way to place them in worship. As a final note, I will explain about the Kalasha Puja you perform today.
So here Appa
Kalasha
saying that he will explain about the Kalasha Puja that Gajat Swamigal and his family had done that day. But that is a whole chapter in itself. So we are going to go ahead and read that next week. But so far, we can understand what we've understood is what is God, how to connect to higher consciousness, what are the different levels of worship, and then we'll continue with next week of reading how Kalasha Puja is done and why.